Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for the Q&A. So let's go ahead and knock this out. All right, first question. Should you replace barbell rows with Pendlay rows as you demonstrated in the 2.0 for the 1.0 5x5 program? Yeah, I've always kind of intended for quite a few years that I want people rowing from the floor. We'll get to that in the next question, but one of the reasons that we barbell row is to build up the muscles that we need for the deadlift. Right, it's build up muscles we need for the deadlifting. The stricter row from the floor carries over better. But more importantly, the thing I want people to think about is that why do you think I wrote a 2.0? I wrote the 2.0 because the 1.0 is inappropriate for most novice lifters. I found that a lot of people got phenomenal results on it, but a lot of people floundered on it. Like it was very, very popular because a lot of people who had decent genetics or who were willing to eat a lot of food, or particularly guys who started really fat and then cut down while running it, got amazing results. But when we dealt with the normal skinny guy who was the under eater, which was again a pretty big segment, or people with completely average genetics who weren't willing to bulk, the program just has way too much workload, and a lot of people struggled with it. It's overall too much volume. And so one of the things that I did was I cut some of the volume out early on, years ago, right? And people didn't always realize that because they didn't see the follow-up videos and stuff in the playlists and everything else, where I took some of the exercises out because it was all around just a bit too much. And then I finally came up with the 2.0 because I feel like the majority of people will make just as good a gains on the 2.0 as the 1.0. So I essentially implemented the 2.0 to phase out the 1.0, to phase out the 1.0. And I'm not saying you can't run it, but what I might even say is that you would probably be better running the 2.0 and adding in a little more training volume. All right. If you felt that you really could run the 1.0, I would probably add more stuff to the 2.0 for you. Maybe some chin ups and stuff like that. A little bit of additional work. Maybe some extra hamstring work. Maybe add chin-ups and glute ham raises or something if you really wanted to run the 2.0 but felt that you're physically capable. And it's not that the 1.0 is bad. It's that some of the exercise selection, I think it's just too much volume, and it was one of the biggest problems I had because I put that thing out many, many years ago as a test run. And people have to remember when I put that program out, I was not planning on my channel getting as big as it is. All right. You guys need to understand, I had 10 subscribers when I made that original video. I had 10 subscribers. I never thought I would actually make a living doing YouTube and would get millions and millions of views. So put that in perspective. All right, next question. Hi, Jason. What builds more lats, barbell rows or Pendlay rows? Thanks, coach. They're the same thing. All right. The traditional row up until bodybuilders kind of took over was a row from the floor. You row from the floor. That is always what a row was. So the modern variation isn't a barbell row. It's the bent over row because you're more upright. You're bent over a little bit, and again, it tends to be more upright. That's a bodybuilder row, and ironically, it builds less lats, right? For obvious reasons, it builds less lats. The more upright your position goes, the less lats you're going to develop. And in fact, if you think about it, what do we think of as probably the best lat exercises ever developed? The pull-up or the chin-up. So if you think about the motion involved in what the scapula do and the lats do on those exercises, and you realize what happens when you start going the other direction, because that's where your arms are over your head and pulling, right? Pulling down and back. If you're pulling up and back, there's very, very little lat involvement. So the way a lot of bodybuilders are doing it, the more upright they get, the less lats they're utilizing and more trap. So the Pendlay row strikes a better balance, or at least a traditional barbell row. Remember, it's the same thing. They're interchangeable. And even Glenn Pendlay used to joke and say, I don't know why they call it a Pendlay row. I just call it a row. Because he made it somewhat famous again. It got famous in certain online circles, but it was just called a row back in the 60s, 50s, 70s. It's just a row, guys. It's how rows are performed. That's how they're performed. But what I will say, if lats are your number one goal, you're like, I want the biggest lats possible, not necessarily the most upper back or trap or everything else. I'm not saying deadlifts and rows can't build it, they can. But if you wanted to be a little more efficient about it, I mean, a weighted pull-up is the best thing you could probably do. If your lats are seriously lagging and you're having to find the best lat exercises, I'd spend some time getting strong at weighted pull-ups. Give you the most bang for your buck. All right, next question. Would you recommend ass to grass or parallel squat in your 5x5 program? Also pause at the bottom or not? All right, go back to that original statement about my 5x5. All right, put that in perspective. Now let's come over to novice programs. Ass to grass squats are not the best way to build muscle. Let me give you a pause there and let that sink in. Parallel is just fine. Parallel in many cases is ideal. There's a lot of data on that. I'll actually agree with even the starting strength guys on that. They've produced a lot of really good biomechanics explaining why. Go check that out. Now, the point we need to make here, most novice lifters don't know what parallel is. To the average novice lifter, a half squat is parallel. A half squat is parallel. And 1 inch above parallel is ass to grass. So what I would say for the average novice lifter, what you think is ass to grass, go about 2 inches deeper than that. And that's probably going to put you just below parallel. But that's in novice terms. In real terms, squatting to parallel or just below is probably ideal for overall hypertrophy. Very few people can squat ass to grass correctly and get the best leverages. You're not Clarence Kennedy. The majority of people are not built that way, and a lot of the point we get to is that a lot of the tension gets distributed, you end up having to reduce the weight so much that you lose a lot of tension at the peak points of tension for some of the muscles like the quads and hips and things. So you're basically losing a lot of quad development and back development, everything else, just to get a little bit more glute. There's other exercises we could do to bring your glutes up if they're a weak link. I don't think we need to do full squats like that. I think parallel to 1 inch below is fine. But what has to be reiterated every time this topic comes up, the average novice lifter does not know what parallel is. They do not know what parallel is. They will do a half squat. They will be 8 to 10 inches above parallel and call it a parallel. It has nothing to do with the top of your thigh, for those who don't know. It has to do when the crease in your hip drops below your knee. You can only tell from the side perfectly. All right, next question. If you are overweight and can't barbell squat due to caving knees, what are my options for building lower body strength? Overweight has nothing to do with your knees caving. Your knees are caving because you have muscle weaknesses. Do a box squat then. And you can't do a barbell because you're overweight. Okay, well then use something lighter than a barbell. Use a broomstick. Get a pair of 5-pound dumbbells, put them on your shoulders, use your body weight. And if you've got the caving knees, so learn to drive your knees out, learn to do a box squat. Get on a nice deep box and box squat to a nice deep box and drive your knees out until you develop the hip and glute strength that you need. But the only reason being overweight would stop you from barbell squatting is that the barbell is just too heavy. All right. Well, that's resolvable by using something lighter. You can use a broomstick. You can use a piece of PVC pipe. You can get a woman's bar. And like I said, if that's not going to work, then you can clean a pair of little light dumbbells up to your shoulders. I mean, I've taken someone before who wasn't strong enough to squat. They lacked both the physical confidence. They thought it was mobility and the strength to squat. Well, I had them box squat with a pair of 10-pound dumbbells. Clean them up onto your shoulders. Same weight distribution you get with a barbell, and you squat to a box. But being overweight has never prevented anyone from having a 900-pound squat. Okay? Having an enormous, giant, fat belly that weighs 100 pounds has never stopped elite level fat power lifters from squatting 800 or 900 pounds. That's a lot of weight on a barbell. So that's not an excuse. It just means you're too weak to handle the weight for now. Well, do what you can. It's all about relative tension relative to your strength. If all you can do is squat to a box with just your body weight, then do that. But you do have to learn to drive those knees out. And that muscle weakness, like anything else, will fix itself. And you've got a muscle weakness like that as a novice, that can literally be fixed in 2 to 3 weeks. That's how fast you adapt early on. So there's your solution. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.